The autumn afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as 8-year-old Princess Charlotte walked slowly down the marble corridor. Her small footsteps echoed softly against the grand walls, but today the familiar surroundings felt different somehow. The young princess had always been known for her bright smile and cheerful demeanor, but on this particular day, something was troubling her deeply. Charlotte had been trying to be brave all morning, just as her parents had taught her. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge had always emphasized the importance of showing strength, especially in public. But sometimes even princesses need help, and today was one of those days. The palace staff noticed the change in the little princess immediately. Mrs. Henderson, the head housekeeper who had worked at Kensington Palace for over 20 years, watched with concern as Charlotte passed by the morning room, where she usually stopped to chat about her lessons or share stories about her brothers. Prince George and Prince Louis, Charlotte's governess, Miss Sarah, had also observed that the princess seemed quieter than usual during their morning studies. When asked if everything was all right, Charlotte had simply nodded and continued with her mathematics work, but her usual enthusiasm was noticeably absent. The young princess, who typically raised her hand eagerly to answer questions and loved to share her thoughts about history and literature, seemed lost in her own world. As the day progressed, Charlotte found herself wandering through different rooms of the palace looking for something she couldn't quite name. She visited the library where she often spent hours reading fairy tales and adventure stories, but even her favorite books couldn't capture her attention today. She went to the music room where she practiced piano, but her fingers felt heavy on the keys. The palace guards had been watching Princess Charlotte throughout the day, as was their duty. They were trained to observe and protect, but they were also human beings who had grown fond of the young royals over the years. Sergeant Major William Thompson, a decorated military officer who had been assigned to the royal family for 5 years, had noticed Charlotte's unusual behavior from the moment she stepped out of her private quarters that morning. Thompson had served in various military operations around the world, but nothing had prepared him for the gentle responsibility of watching over children. Over the years, he had developed a special fondness for Princess Charlotte, who often greeted him with enthusiasm and asked about his family. She was curious about his life outside the palace and always remembered details about his wife and 2 daughters. The other guards had also grown attached to the princess. Corporal James Mitchell, who had been with the Royal Protection Unit for 3 years, often found himself smiling when Charlotte would wave at him from the palace windows or stop to ask about his day when their paths crossed in the corridors. The afternoon wore on, Charlotte's distress became more apparent. She had been trying so hard to maintain her composure, but the weight of whatever was troubling her seemed to be growing heavier with each passing hour. The palace staff exchanged concerned glances, and even the usually formal atmosphere of the royal residence seemed to sense that something was amiss. Finally, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Charlotte made a decision that would reveal just how much she trusted the people who protected her family every day. She had been walking past the main security station when she suddenly stopped. Her small hands were pressed against her sides, and for the first time that day, tears began to well up in her eyes. The moment that would touch hearts around the world was about to unfold, showing that even in the most formal and protected environments, genuine human compassion could shine through. Princess Charlotte, despite her royal upbringing and the protocols that surrounded her daily life, was about to demonstrate that sometimes the most powerful thing anyone can do is simply ask for help when they need it most. Charlotte stood frozen outside the security station, her heart beating rapidly as she struggled with her emotions. The tears she had been holding back all day were now threatening to spill over, and she felt a mix of embarrassment and desperation. Royal children were taught from an early age about dignity and composure. But in that moment, Charlotte was simply a little girl who needed support. Sergeant Major Thompson noticed her immediately. He had been reviewing the day's security reports when he caught sight of the small figure standing uncertainly by the doorway. His military training had taught him to notice details, and what he saw concerned him greatly. The princess's usually bright eyes were filled with unshed tears. Her shoulders were tense, and she appeared to be struggling with something significant. Thompson set aside his paperwork and approached Charlotte slowly, mindful not to startle her. He had learned over the years that children needed to feel safe and understood, especially when they were upset. His own daughters had taught him that sometimes adults needed to get down to a child's level, both literally and figuratively, to truly connect with them. "Your Royal Highness," Thompson said gently, crouching down so he could meet Charlotte's eyes. "Is everything all right? You look like you might need someone to talk to." Charlotte looked up at the kind guard whose familiar face had become a source of comfort over the years. She opened her mouth to speak but found that the words wouldn't come. Instead, the tears that she had been fighting finally began to fall, rolling slowly down her cheeks as she struggled to maintain the composure she felt was expected of her. The sight of the young princess crying touched Thompson's heart deeply. He had seen her grow from a toddler into a bright, confident child, and witnessing her distress felt personal to him. Without hesitation, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a clean handkerchief, offering it to Charlotte with a gentle smile. "Sometimes, tears are the bravest thing we can show," Thompson said softly, remembering something his own mother had told him years ago. "They mean we're honest about our feelings, and that takes real courage." Charlotte accepted the handkerchief gratefully and wiped her eyes. Thompson's words surprised her because they were different from what she usually heard about crying. Most adults seemed uncomfortable when children showed strong emotions, but Thompson's response made her feel understood rather than ashamed. Other guards in the station had noticed the interaction, but they maintained their professional distance while keeping a watchful eye. Corporal Mitchell, who was monitoring the security cameras, made sure that the area remained private for the princess. He dimmed the lights slightly in the corridor to discourage other staff members from walking through, understanding instinctively that Charlotte needed space to express whatever was troubling her. "Would you like to sit down?" Thompson asked, gesturing to a comfortable chair that had been placed near the security station for visiting officials. "Sometimes it helps to take a moment when we're feeling overwhelmed." Charlotte nodded and settled into the chair, which seemed much too large for her small frame. Thompson pulled up another chair and sat across from her, maintaining a respectful distance while staying close enough to offer comfort. His presence was reassuring without being intrusive, and Charlotte began to feel safer about opening up. "I've been watching you today," Thompson said carefully, "and I noticed you seemed worried about something. You know, Princess Charlotte, even the strongest people need help sometimes. It doesn't make them weak. It makes them smart enough to know they don't have to face everything alone." These words resonated deeply with Charlotte. She had been carrying her burden all day, trying to be the perfect princess that everyone expected her to be. But Thompson's gentle approach made her realize that perhaps it was okay to admit when she needed support. The guard's genuine concern and patient demeanor created a safe space where she finally felt comfortable enough to share what had been troubling her so deeply. Taking a deep breath, Charlotte finally found her voice. "Sergeant Major Thompson," she began, her words coming out in a rush. "I'm scared about something, and I don't know what to do." The admission felt both frightening and liberating at the same time. Thompson leaned forward slightly, giving Charlotte his complete attention. "I'm listening, Your Royal Highness. What's frightening you?" Charlotte twisted the handkerchief in her small hands as she gathered her thoughts. "There's a girl at school named Emma. She's new, and some of the other children have been saying mean things about her family. They say her parents don't have important jobs like theirs do, and they won't let her join their games during break time." Thompson nodded thoughtfully, recognizing the weight of what Charlotte was sharing. Bullying was a serious concern for any child, but for a member of the royal family, the situation carried additional complexity. "That sounds very hurtful for Emma. How does this make you feel?" "It makes me feel sick inside," Charlotte said, her voice trembling slightly. "I want to help her, but I'm scared. Some of these children are from very important families, and if I stand up to them, they might not like me anymore. But if I don't help Emma, then I'm just as bad as they are." The young princess paused, wiping her eyes again. "Last week I saw Emma sitting alone during lunch, and she was crying. I wanted to go sit with her, but my friends pulled me away to their table. I keep thinking about how sad she looked, and I can't stop feeling guilty about it." Thompson was struck by the maturity and compassion Charlotte was displaying. At only 8 years old, she was grappling with complex moral decisions that many adults would find challenging. Her distress wasn't about herself, but about her inability to help someone who was suffering. "Your Royal Highness," Thompson said, gently. The fact that you're worried about Emma shows what a kind heart you have. But I can understand why you're feeling torn. Standing up to others can be scary, especially when you're worried about the consequences. Charlotte nodded vigorously. Exactly. And there's more. Yesterday I heard some of the children planning to play a mean trick on Emma during our art class today. They were going to hide her painting and tell the teacher she was being careless. I wanted to warn her, but I couldn't find the right moment, and now I'm worried about what happened to her. The tears began flowing again as Charlotte continued. I know my parents always tell us to be kind to everyone and to use our position to help people, but when I'm at school it feels so much harder than it sounds. I don't want to be a tattletale, but I also don't want Emma to keep getting hurt. Thompson was moved by Charlotte's genuine distress over another child's welfare. He could see that she had been carrying this emotional burden alone, trying to figure out how to do the right thing while navigating the complex social dynamics of her school environment. You know what, Princess Charlotte? Thompson said, his voice filled with warmth and understanding. What you're feeling right now, this worry about doing the right thing even when it's difficult, that's exactly what makes a true leader. Your parents would be very proud of you for caring so much about Emma. Charlotte looked up at him with hopeful eyes. But what should I do? I feel like I've already failed Emma by not helping her sooner. Thompson smiled reassuringly. You haven't failed anyone. The fact that you're here, asking for help and wanting to do better shows tremendous courage. Now let's think about this together and find a way to help Emma that feels right for you. For the first time that day, Charlotte felt a sense of relief washing over her. She wasn't alone in this difficult situation anymore, and Thompson's understanding response gave her hope that there might be a solution that could help Emma without compromising her own values or safety. Thompson sat back in his chair, thinking carefully about Charlotte's situation. His years of military service had taught him about strategy and problem-solving, but more importantly, his experience as a father had given him insights into the delicate world of childhood friendships and school dynamics. Princess Charlotte, he began thoughtfully, I think the first thing we need to remember is that helping someone doesn't always have to be a big, dramatic gesture. Sometimes the most powerful help comes in small, consistent acts of kindness. Charlotte Moe wiped her nose with the handkerchief and looked at him with curiosity. What do you mean? Well, Thompson explained, you mentioned that you wanted to sit with Emma during lunch but got pulled away by your friends. What if tomorrow you made a point of inviting Emma to join you and your friends? You could say something like, Emma, would you like to sit with us today? We were just talking about our weekend plans. Charlotte's eyes brightened slightly. That sounds less scary than confronting the bullies directly. But what if my friends don't want Emma to sit with us? Thompson nodded, understanding her concern. That's where your natural leadership comes in. You could set the tone by being genuinely interested in Emma. Ask her questions about her interests, her family, or her previous school. When other children see that you value Emma as a person, they're more likely to follow your example. But what about the mean things they say about her family? Charlotte asked, still worried. That's a perfect opportunity to show them a different perspective, Thompson replied. You could say something like, I think all jobs are important because they help people in different ways. You don't have to be confrontational, but you can plant seeds of kindness and understanding. Charlotte was beginning to feel more hopeful, but she still had concerns. What about the trick they were planning with her painting? Should I tell the teacher? Thompson considered this carefully. There are different ways to handle that situation. You could speak to Emma privately before art class and mention that you heard some children talking about playing tricks. You could suggest she keeps a close eye on her artwork. That way, you're helping her protect herself without directly confronting the other children or involving the teacher unnecessarily. The young princess was absorbing all of this advice, her mind working through the possibilities. So you think I can help Emma without making a big scene or getting anyone in trouble? Absolutely, Thompson assured her. In fact, this approach might be even more effective in the long run. When you consistently show kindness and inclusion, other children often start to follow your example. You might find that some of the children who were being mean to Emma were just following the crowd. And when you show them a different way to behave, they'll change too. Charlotte felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. This sounds like something I can actually do. I was so scared, because I thought I had to choose between being popular and doing the right thing. Thompson smiled warmly. The beautiful thing is, Princess Charlotte, truly good friends will respect you more for including others and showing kindness. And if someone stops being your friend because you were kind to someone else, then they probably weren't a real friend, to begin with. The wisdom in these words resonated with Charlotte. She had been so focused on the potential negative consequences of helping Emma that she hadn't considered the positive outcomes that could result from taking a stand for kindness. There's something else I want you to remember, Thompson continued. Your parents, the Duke and Duchess, have always emphasized that with privilege comes responsibility. Your position at school gives you influence, and using that influence to help someone who's struggling is exactly the kind of leadership your family represents. Charlotte straightened up in her chair, feeling a sense of purpose beginning to replace her earlier anxiety. You're right. I keep forgetting that I have the power to make things better, not just worry about them. Thompson was proud of how quickly Charlotte was grasping these concepts. Exactly. And remember, you don't have to solve everything at once. Start small, be consistent, and trust that your kindness will make a difference. As their conversation continued, other members of the palace staff began to take notice of the meaningful interaction taking place. Corporal Mitchell, who had been quietly observing from his security station, was moved by the gentle way Thompson was handling the situation. He had his own children and understood how crucial these moments were in shaping a young person's character. Mrs. Henderson, the head housekeeper, happened to pass by and noticed Princess Charlotte deep in conversation with Sergeant Major Thompson. Rather than interrupt, she paused nearby, pretending to arrange some flowers while listening to the tail end of their discussion. She had worked with royal families for decades and had seen many children struggle with the unique pressures of their position, but she was impressed by Charlotte's genuine concern for others. Sergeant Major Thompson, Charlotte said, her voice now stronger and more confident. I have another question. What if I try to help Emma, but she doesn't want my help? What if she thinks I'm just feeling sorry for her? Thompson appreciated the thoughtfulness of her question. That's a very mature concern, Your Royal Highness. The key is to approach Emma as an equal, not as someone you're trying to rescue. Instead of saying, I notice you're being bullied and I want to help you, you could simply be friendly and include her naturally. Like just treating her the way I would want to be treated if I were new at school? Charlotte asked. Exactly, Thompson confirmed. Everyone wants to feel like they belong somewhere. By including Emma in conversations, inviting her to join activities, and showing genuine interest in her thoughts and opinions, you're giving her something much more valuable than protection from bullies. You're giving her friendship and acceptance. Charlotte nodded thoughtfully. I think I understand. It's not about rescuing her. It's about being a good friend. That's right, Thompson said with a smile. And here's something else to consider. Emma might have wonderful qualities and interests that you and your friends haven't discovered yet. By getting to know her, you might find that she enriches your group in ways you never expected. This perspective excited Charlotte. Oh, I hadn't thought of that. Maybe Emma has hobbies or stories that would be interesting to learn about. I've been so focused on the problem that I forgot she's probably a really nice person who just needs a chance to show it. Mrs. Henderson, who had been listening while arranging the nearby flowers, was so touched by Charlotte's transformation that she decided to approach. Excuse me, Your Royal Highness, she said gently. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. I want you to know how proud I am of your kind heart. Charlotte looked up at Mrs. Henderson with surprise but smiled warmly. The housekeeper had always been like a grandmother figure to the royal children, offering comfort and wisdom when needed. Mrs. Henderson, Charlotte said, do you think what Sergeant Major Thompson is suggesting will really work? The experienced housekeeper sat down on a nearby chair, her eyes twinkling with warmth. Princess Charlotte, I've been working in royal households for many years, and I've seen how powerful genuine kindness can be. Some of the most important changes in the world have started with one person deciding to treat someone else with dignity and respect. She continued, Your great-grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, once told me that the most meaningful moments in her reign weren't the grand ceremonies or state visits, but the small acts of kindness she was able to show to individuals who needed support. That's the true mark of nobility. Not the title you're born with, but the way you choose to treat others. Charlotte felt a surge of pride and determination. I want to be like that. I want Emma to feel welcome and valued, not just protected. Thompson and Mrs. Henderson exchanged a meaningful look, both recognizing that they were witnessing something special. This young princess was learning one of life's most important lessons, that true strength comes from lifting others up, not from standing above them. Princess Charlotte, Thompson said, I believe you're going to handle this situation beautifully. Trust your instincts, be authentic in your kindness, and remember that you have people here who support you. If you ever need advice or just want to talk about how things are going, my door is always open. Charlotte stood up from her chair, feeling transformed from the girl who had approached the security station in tears just an hour earlier. Thank you so much, Sergeant Major Thompson, and thank you, Mrs. Henderson. I feel so much better now, and I actually feel excited about going to school tomorrow. The following weeks brought remarkable changes to Princess Charlotte's school experience and her understanding of leadership. True to her word, she began implementing the strategies Thompson had suggested, starting small but remaining consistent in her efforts to include Emma in her daily activities. On the first day after their conversation, Charlotte arrived at school with a new sense of purpose. During lunch break, she noticed Emma sitting alone again with her sandwich, looking out the window while other children played in groups around the cafeteria. Instead of joining her usual table immediately, Charlotte walked over to Emma with a genuine smile. Hi, Emma, Charlotte said warmly. I was wondering if you'd like to sit with me and my friends today. We were talking about our favorite books, and I'd love to hear about yours. Emma's face lit up with surprise and gratitude, and she eagerly accepted the invitation. The response from Charlotte's friends was mixed at first. Some seemed puzzled by the sudden inclusion of the new girl, but Charlotte's enthusiastic questioning about Emma's interests helped break the ice. It turned out that Emma was passionate about astronomy and had fascinating stories about stargazing with her father, who worked as a night security guard at a local observatory. As the days passed, Emma's unique perspective and knowledge began to win over even the children who had previously ignored or excluded her. Charlotte watched with growing satisfaction as Emma transformed from a lonely outsider to a valued member of their group, contributing her own special qualities to their friendships. The situation with the bullies resolved itself more naturally than Charlotte had expected. When the children who had been mean to Emma saw that Princess Charlotte not only accepted Emma but genuinely enjoyed her company, their behavior began to change. Some approached Emma to apologize for their earlier treatment, while others simply began including her in activities they had previously excluded her from. Thompson continued to check in with Charlotte periodically, always maintaining the appropriate, formal distance while showing genuine interest in how she was handling the situation. During one of their brief conversations in the palace corridor, Charlotte excitedly reported that Emma had been invited to several birthday parties and had even been chosen as a partner for an important science project. The most amazing thing, Charlotte told Thompson, is that helping Emma didn't make me lose any friends. Instead, our whole group seems happier now. Emma brings such interesting ideas and stories, and she's really funny once you get to know her. Thompson smiled with satisfaction, recognizing that Charlotte had learned something far more valuable than conflict resolution. She had discovered the joy of inclusive leadership and the strength that comes from building others up. Mrs. Henderson, who had become something of a confidant to Charlotte, was particularly pleased when the princess shared another development. Emma invited me to visit the observatory where her father works, Charlotte said excitedly. My parents said yes, and we're going next weekend. I'm going to learn about constellations and maybe see planets through the big telescope. The impact of Charlotte's actions extended beyond just Emma. Other children in her class began to notice how the princess treated everyone with kindness and respect, regardless of their family background or social status. Teachers reported that the overall atmosphere in Charlotte's class had become more inclusive and supportive. Months later, when Charlotte's parents learned about the situation and how she had handled it, they were deeply proud of their daughter's maturity and compassion. The Duke and Duchess recognized that Charlotte had internalized the values they had tried to instill in her. But more importantly, she had found her own way to express those values authentically. The experience became a defining moment in Charlotte's young life, teaching her that true nobility comes not from title or position, but from how one chooses to treat others. She had learned that asking for help when facing difficult decisions was a sign of wisdom, not weakness, and that the adults around her were there to support and guide her through life's challenges. For Thompson, Mrs. Henderson, and the other palace staff who had witnessed Charlotte's growth, the incident became a source of ongoing pride. They had seen firsthand how a young princess could embody the best qualities of leadership: compassion, courage, and the wisdom to seek guidance when needed. The beautiful response from the royal guard had been more than just advice. It had been a demonstration of how adults can support children in developing their own moral compass and finding their own ways to make the world a little kinder and more inclusive.